Shalom and good day all. This is Tehillim29 back again for another anime movie review. And of course, this anime movie review consists of Jujutsu Kaisen Zero. In fact, this the movie in relation to this, as well as the story in relation to this, or the manga. Um, this was done after. Um, I think when this actually came out, it was I think after volume 7. Even though I do believe it was done a little bit before that, and I must admit, the way that this story has been adapted to film, I'll definitely get around to that very shortly. If it's one thing I really like about this particular film, is that it actually serves a real good introduction to the Jujutsu high school, or the Jujutsu school in this manga, and to which you learn about some of the sorcerers that are in it, and also some of the things that they do. It's a really good introductory manga. And when I actually got around to reading this manga in regards to Jujutsu Kaisen, I know with some people they end up reading volumes 1 onwards, and then reading volume 0 later on. Well, through my manga reading time, the way that I had organized my manga, I had it organized so I could read volume 0 first. And I must admit, I really did enjoy the manga. But what's even more important is seeing how they brought this manga into anime. And this is where I'm here to talk about it now. This is a, col- a collection of posters, to which I have here, or have to show here. Oop, sorry about that. There's another one, and this is one that was sort of used in Australia, and that somewhat was also used for Australia as well. But what I'll do is I'll keep it on this one because it's my favorite out of all three. So, and I'll start to make a beginning on the review for this movie. Now, what I've done is I've broken it down into 3 acts, to which I've recorded the information down, or recorded my notes down, and including the main title and whatever else. So I'll start off at the beginning, which is basically welcome to Jujutsu Kaisen. And the first act, we have Enter Yuta. And that's what I decided to call it because in this we actually learn of one of the previous students that are connected to the Jujutsu High, and his name is called Yuta. And one of the things we also learn about this character is that yes, he does get bullied quite a bit. Plus, he also has somewhat a bit of trauma and finds it hard to get a bit of closure. But I'll get to that as soon as we move into the beginning. So I'll start on covering the first part of the first act. So, as the first part of the first act begins, we meet a student being bullied in a school in Japan, Yuta being his name, until we see Rika, a curse that has connected itself to Yuta's life, ending the life of the bullies. We get some small time skips between the past and the present in this part of the arc, and this also is reflected basically throughout the whole story. We get these time skips between past and present, but not just with these characters. We do somewhat get it with some of the additional characters that make up this story. And how Yuta ended up with such a curse in his life, and whom Rika is to him. only to be brought in by Gojo into the Jujutsu Kaisen school, where he meets Maki, Togi, and Panda. As things progress and move to an elementary school, so this starts to move towards one of their first early missions in the story. And this is done with all four of them, to which they now must exorcise some cursed spirits from the school. And also getting from Gojo as the how the curses work in this universe. So Gojo is a really good character, but not just Gojo. If I were to say one thing, I'd say all of the characters do a really good job in trying to help you to understand the world of curses. As the second part of the first act continues, after the defeat of the curse at the elementary school, Yuta knows how weak he is physically. And yes, when you do see this character, you can see how he isn't really physically fit, but he also needs improvement. In other words, you feel from the character that he's like weak as anything. And he also looks to improve on that. As things progress and the learning of more around the curses and how they work, Gojo helps him out by giving him a katana to use, to which Gojo tells him of how to use his curse to infuse a weapon to sort of like be more direct in his strikes instead of like having a curse go practically a- out of his control. To which he also gets some practice in with Maki. And you get to see Maki and Yuta practice together. Uh, with Yuta, he's sort of like using a kendo stick. And with Maki, she's using like a staff, but there's like a ribbon on the staff of sorts, or a rope on the staff of sorts, to indicate that on a certain part of her staff is meant to represent a blade, because when she uses her weapon, it also has a blade with her. And I must admit, that was really well done, really well executed. As Togi, Inamaki, and Panda watch him train as 3 months pass. So, in it, we do get a bit of a time limit of events, and this also continues like through other parts of the story too. I'm not able to sort of like give accurate times, but at least I'm able to give locations to which this story made up in. Moving into the second act, the next team up mission. Now, as we enter the first part of the second act, Inamaki and Yuta, so that's Togi, Inamaki, and Yuta have been sent to an abandoned shopping district to remove some curses until things slightly get hectic when a curse that wasn't there before makes its appearance. Yuta, even in his weaknesses in this situation, must find his courage, and yes, he literally has to find his courage, even to help Inamaki Togi out, who lost his throat medicine when something happened on one of the scenes, to take on the new curse in the shopping district building. Gojo, after the events, investigates the scene as we learn that there is a banished cursed sorcerer by the name of Ghetto, sort of like showing up at the scenes but not letting himself be known. And that's the only way to address that. As things progress into the second part of the second act, we are introduced to Ghetto, who is helping some ladies out in relation to a haunting. Moving forward into the story, we return to Jujutsu High, to where Maki, Togi, Panda, and Yuta until they get an unwanted visitor in the person of Ghetto, who lays out a bit of a challenge to the Jujutsu sorcerers to go to Shibuya in Japan on December 24th because it's sort of like a demon's parade as to what's being set up on that day, or it's known as a demon's parade that's set up on that day. As the day is reached, Gojo's intuition feels something is afoot, to which he also has Panda and Togi with him. Now, one thing I need to tell you, the audience, is that both Panda and Togi have their own unique curses, to which Panda is able to sort of like use his curse power to sort of like somewhat change his appearance. And yes, he is an actual panda who grew up under the principal in the high school or in the Jujutsu high school. And with Togi Inamaki, um, his curse involves sort of like curse speech, to which, in a way, he has to somehow do a way to, or he has to speak certain words over a certain period of time. And you do learn that this person was also born with it. And the way this curse affects him or affects the things around him is that he has to sort of like muffle it in a way, so he doesn't harm others. But when it comes to fighting demons, he basically zips his coat down, speaks towards the curse, and the curse, something can happen to it, including leading to its own destruction. And the difference is like with all of these jujutsu sorcerers, they are also at different ranks. So I really hope that helps you. And he also teleports into the Jujutsu High. And Maki, she, you do learn that a number of these sorcerers that he's also working with also grew up in homes of sort of like sorcerers. And that's something you really get from Maki's side of things. Jumping into the third act, so Ghetto's plan and Yusha's resolve. Moving into the first part of Act 3, Ghetto has made his way to the Jujutsu High, whilst his underlings are in the city of Shibuya fighting in the city. As Ghetto gets started and begins to take on Yuta's new friends, being Maki and Togi, and eventually Panda, drawing Yuta out of hiding, and Yuta, and for Ghetto to bring out his big gun curses. And we also do learn about how with Ghetto, he is a curse manipulator. Um, and he's able sort of like grab curses, like make him into sort of like a type of orb and devour them. But he's also able to bring them back up and use them in very mean ways in this story. Now, we also learn that Ghetto is also trying to bring out his big gun of curses to try to obtain Rika, because at the moment, Ghetto doesn't know what Rika is, if Rika is actually an individual curse or something else. To which Yusha is trying to find peace with her as his curse, with things ending in the city and things moving back to the Jujutsu High, and a battle between Yuta and Ghetto. As the second part of the third act begins, Ghetto goes into full attack against Yuta. With a brief glimpse into what is happening in Shibuya, Nanani, who is also a character from which you do see in the first season of Jujutsu Kaisen. You do get to see how his curse works because it's like he's able to find weak points, and when he finds those weak points in a curse, he strikes at it and destroys it. Um, who is also a Jujutsu sorcerer who helps off fending off the curses. As things grow scarce in Shibuya, with a number of sorcerers lost, the members of the Tokyo Jujutsu High also turn up to help. And we also get to see these members connected to the Tokyo Jujutsu High show up in basically the second part of the first season. Yuta makes a big life changing decision in his fight against Geto, to which he doesn't expect him to surrender himself fully over to the curse of Rika. As he continues to fight, or as he continues his fight against Geto, and as the battle finishes up between Yuta and Geto, Geto is injured and ends up meeting again with Gojo to learn that Yuta is from a seed line of sorcerers to which he had no knowledge of, and why he felt he couldn't connect to the understanding of like the Jujutsu sorcerer world to the fullest. So now it's time to move into my afterthoughts in relation to this particular movie. And my goodness, there is quite a bit to say here. So I'll try to get this out as quick as possible. So the first act of this anime movie has a beginning to which we encounter Yuta and his bullies with the flashbacks between the past and present, and how Rika plays a part in removing his bully. With that little information, we are shown in his background with Rika, and with progressing to being brought into the Jujutsu High with Gojo and meeting up with who some acquaintances who would become his friends, like being Panda, Inamaki, and Maki, and to getting his first lot of hands on experience to fighting curses. So you get to see how new he is to this, how much anxiety he has in regards to this. You get to see a lot of things, and I think with this, I think in some ways, Yuta can somewhat be sometimes a slightly better character than Yuji, but Yuji has his things that make him good too. Now, I know that these are two different characters, but we are talking about Yuta for now. By the time we move into the second act and the next mission for him, we go on with Inamaki, and we start to see how he has learned to imbue a sword with cursed energy and to cancel out some cursed energy demons until we finally get the introduction of Geto, who we learn later on is also a friend of Gojo in the Jujutsu Kaisen school. Plus, to how he sees everyone below him as monkeys, so he considers everyone else under him to be inferior. And with his curse manipulation, and takes on those people who he sees as fit to be with him. Moving into the third act of this movie, events move forward into the curse fight in the city to the curse fight at the Jujutsu High, to where Yuta is, and Gojo's quick thinking also sends Inamaki and Panda to help out in the situation. Yusha's only key goal from the beginning of this movie was to find closure between himself and Rika, who died, and also as he has his own theory as to what led it to happen. It's nice to see how they adapt this from the manga to film, to even showing his connection to the sorcerer bloodline, to which he had no idea of, as it also becomes a bit of a revelation for himself as well, knowing how difficult it was for him to try to learn and adapt to the Jujutsu sorcerer ways. This movie certainly had some sad undertones, but definitely made up for it when Yusa got his closure in the story, to even making some new friends along the way. But you could definitely see the naivety and innocence he had as well in certain situations. Whilst he was trying to learn a new thing he had become a part of. The end of this movie, including its post credit scene, was quite interesting as to how he had moved on from the events of Jujutsu High, as well as a reuniting with Gojo again. The main supporting characters in this was pretty good, along with the animation. I must admit, I did enjoy the soundtrack in this. In other words, the music soundtrack in this, or the album in this, I really enjoyed. It really got me into feeling the situation as to what was occurring from beginning to end. That was a big standout for me in this. Um, and it definitely makes an impression on the story. The ratings I give this movie, I stick with. So for the main characters, I give an 8 out of 10. For the supporting characters, I give an 8 out of 10. The animation, I really love the animation, to which I gave an 8.5 out of 10. But for the overall story, I gave an 8 out of 10. I'd like to give a big thanks to the creator of Jujutsu Kaisen. Until then, let's keep it colorful. And a big thanks to everyone who happens to listen and watch through this review. I can't do this without you as I'm on the road to 250 subs. Until then, let's keep it colorful and have yourself an